Well, thanks everyone for hanging in there. We are going to sort of, this is a nice segue into the data conversation, because that's what we're going to be talking about as well. This data issue around zero trust. So let's just get right into it. What does that look like for an organization? How much data are they going to be consuming when they really get to a mature zero trust model?
Sure. I mean, I think you look at how much data is being generated every day, right? It's tens of thousands, petabytes that are available for a lot of organizations that they're having to deal with, manage, store, as the previous speaker mentioned. Where do you place all that data? How do you tag it? How do you analyze it? And the truth is, a lot of that data is not useful when it comes to analyzing threats or understanding what's happening in your environment. A lot of it is, for lack of a better term, it's trash, right? And so we, as an organization, are looking at how do you prioritize and identify that data that has that value add to an organization. And I think a lot of that comes down to recognizing when it's created as that initial starting point of what is this data, where should it be classified, and not necessarily getting rid of it immediately, but thinking about a long-term lifecycle strategy the moment it's created, rather than trying to deal with that after the fact.
So how do you get ahead of that, right? How do you cycle out the bad data or the junk data and just prioritize on the good stuff that you really need to be looking at?
I mean, it's a challenge, right? I think as an organization, you want to begin with the most critical or sensitive data that you're dealing with. So oftentimes, that's going to be data that you can readily and easily identify because you as an organization have put specific controls in place, right? But what is that data that sits right next to that? And I think there's a lot of, I'm a data scientist at heart, been practicing data science for several years now, and you can look at data based on the behavior that users have around it and how that data is being leveraged with other artifacts. And I think that's a good starting point for an organization to start identifying what is critical and what's not. Not the stuff necessarily that you already know is critical, right? Because that's, you have the controls in place. It's the next layer, the stuff that is adjacent to that. One of the terms that's often used is how can this aggregation of data become critical even if the individual elements are not.
All right, of course, this is something ChatGPT could handle for us, right?
Right.
So what is the role of machine learning in sort of helping organizations handle the data issue?
Sure. I think, things like ChatGPT are great, right? Like they have a lot of really fun interactions that you can have with them. And I think there's an expectation here that they're going to solve all the problems. But in reality, there's a very nuanced opportunity here for machine learning to come in and help identify trends and anomalies, but they're not the end-all be-all. It's not a panacea that you buy a package of artificial intelligence, machine learning, or bring in a team of data scientists. It's really leveraging them. At Leidos, we talk about trusted AI, right? Having humans in the loop in that process to where the data's not being analyzed or tagged on its own. It's working with subject matter experts or people who are very familiar with the data's origin or the criticality of that data within the specific area that they're focused.
But does it mean that organizations do need to bring on some more data scientists, or is this something that partners like Leidos can provide? I mean, what's the balance there from vendor versus people who are in-house?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very important to approach it from a cooperative standpoint, right? And so partnering with vendors as well as organizations like Leidos, we do a lot of partnering with a lot of our customers to bring those capabilities to bear, to stand up the right capabilities or bring artificial intelligence into their environment and train them up to leverage it and to expand it, but also provide that level of resources, because it's not a plug-and-play environment, right? You're going down this journey, and you have to have a guided path and assistance along the way, because it's constantly changing. The weather can change, the destination may change, you may identify new threats. And so having partnerships with people like Leidos or many of the vendors out here who are investing in getting ahead of a lot of these challenges, I think it's really critical.
So we've heard a lot about zero trust for the past few hours. Is there something you haven't heard that you think people here in this room should really take away today?
That's a good question. I think, for me, looking at zero trust from a data science perspective, I think there is a challenge in let's take all the data we have and try to leverage all of that to identify trends or those anomalies. And sometimes I found in practice, sometimes it's most helpful to narrow down, to work within each of the pillars. We're investing significantly in looking at cross-pillar scoring, but that begins by looking within each of the pillars and how can we really get robust modeling of the activities that you would expect, both from a user standpoint, device standpoint, and the data itself, right? I mean, I think it's been highlighted in a lot of discussions that data is becoming or is the center of zero trust. So in a lot of ways, as an organization, rather than trying to eat the elephant whole, how do we boil it down into something that we can be effective and functional at a lower level, and then continue to iterate on that and grow it across the different pillars?
Yep. And lastly, I know we're waiting for some additional guidance from the White House, from CISA. Is there something that you would expect or you want to see coming out of the government to provide greater, maybe more insight, leadership, something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that was really valuable in the discussion from the gentleman from CISA was the guidance documents that they're developing, partnering with industry, talking about how they want to bring in the technologies or delineating capabilities or feature sets, right? I mean, I think as an organization, oftentimes we talk about capabilities in broad terms, but what does that actually mean? What are the features, the attributes? What's the data that needs to be collected from those technologies and leveraged for the pure zero trust, artificial intelligence, machine learning type systems that will help you provide the defenses that zero trust is looking to implement?
Well, awesome. Thank you so much. This was great.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.